In last week's video, I spoke about discerning between a place when we're interacting with others, a place that's more connected and intuitive, where we have access to our resources, our heart's open, and we're more flowing with our natural way of interaction, versus when we become activated or triggered, something knocks us off center. It may be a wounded part of ourself. It kind of triggers a wound. And then we come from a place that's a little more fear-based. Okay, it tends to be more defensive. It tends to be more reactionary. We tend to want to explain ourselves more. Or it could be more primitive than that. We could become, angry or short with people, or we could try to, sometimes we can try to control the situation more, or whatever else, or we can withdraw and be more meek. There's a lot of different ways that can show itself. And so now when I'm talking about it may seem really obvious, but when we're in it, like the discerning between the two, like when I talk about it just now, it's like, well, duh, you should be able to really tell easily. But when you're subjectively involved and you're in the experience, it can be trickier to tell which of those is. And then when you are more activated and reactionary and fear-based, it might even be helpful to discern like what part of you is speaking. And that's more from a healing standpoint, because that's where the healing work. If you ask that person, it's like, okay, that part of me, this part of you that's fear-based and frightened and wounded, like tell me about yourself. Like, what are you worried about? And that's how you can kind of heal that and work with that therapeutically. Okay, so that's one thing you can do is, but that's more for therapy and healing. I want to focus on how we deal with that when it happens, and how we can continue interacting and move through this in a day-to-day basis. And this way, it's also healing and interactive. So, there's the old school way to do this is more warrior-like, and it's more like that part of you is, because often that part of us is kind of the activated part of us, or the triggered part. It's often like a child that's like acting out in one way or another. And so it's like wanting, it's kind of acting out. And the old school way of disciplining a child is disciplining it kind of harshly, like, knock it off. It's not the place for it. It's almost like a boot camp, like being tough with it. I just worked with a client and he was awesome at it. And when he'd found these weak parts of ourselves, he would just like discipline himself to shut them down. And there can be value in this. And that's kind of how we did it in the younger days. In my 20s, maybe we needed that then, I don't know. But I've become more aware of a more compassionate way to do it too. And this way has to do with, it's a two-part process. It's, first of all, it's having the connected part of you be in control. Like, it's the captain of the ship. So then this part of you comes in, and it might be acting out or complaining in one form or another. So we're going to give it a voice, but we're going to also let it know that it's not running the show. Like, I'll listen to you, but you don't get to run the show. And so it's giving it a seat at the table is the way I've sometimes described this. So it's like, I will listen to you. So it's like, tell me about it. This seems so unfair. Okay, or we're going to have to, we need to take care of this. It's like, oh, I just don't want to do that. oh, it's like this might be a whiny, do we really have to? It's like, and so then the part of you that's connected, the higher self part of you is saying, okay, so I can see that you don't want to do that, but we really need to take care of this, you know. But we're listening to it. We're not just shutting it down and telling it to shut up like the old, more disciplined way. It's just like saying, yeah, tell me what you don't like about it. And I'll go in your direction as far as we can, but we do need to take care of this. So it's having compassion for it, yet it's not, but not letting it run the show. So this is kind of like, I've heard this called like parenting your inner child, which is kind of from an inner child perspective. But it's a way that you can manage it. So you are giving it a voice, but you're not letting it run the show. And I know I'm being kind of redundant here. I'm trying to think of an example of how I could explain this to you, how I could make this more clear. This is really useful before, there's kind of phases. There's the more like, I'm in my connected, open heart and flowing space. And then these more defensive, activated parts aren't really there. And then the activated part comes in and starts complaining or acting out or protesting in various ways, letting you know that it's not happy with what's going on. Okay? And then the final part is after if we've been triggered and we kind of fully triggered and we dissociate, then that wounded part of us, that activated part, has kind of taken control. It's kind of usurped you in the interaction. It's kind of hijacked you in that situation. And then you are fully triggered and then you're disconnected from your resources and your open heart and your higher self. When that happens, all you can really do, what I've found is, the sooner you can excuse yourself from that situation and go find a way to get back in your body again, it just is like, there's the time for intervention is kind of gone. You have to go do a full intervention of getting back in your body and starting over again. But what is a useful time is when your connected self, your higher self, is still in charge and you're noticing this activated part is starting to complain and starting to act out and starting to let you know that it's not happy. That is the time that's ripe for intervention, because then you can listen and say, tell me about it. What don't you like about this? And then listen, and then just saying, okay, I can see that you don't want to go to the store, but here's the thing, we need to take care of this. And then later on, we can do something, that maybe you enjoy more. So, but you're acknowledging it. And this is really a useful way to create a new relationship, to create a healthy relationship with that wounded part of you, with that wounded child part of you. It's part of you that's been split off through some type of trauma or rejection or some type of wound. By doing that, you're also giving it a signal, a really important signal that is exactly what I just said. It's like, you're welcome here and you're invited to be here. So I'm not going to abandon you again like I have in the past. You're welcome here, which the first more strong discipline, tough, doesn't work as well for that, because we kind of are abandoning it again, right? This way of saying, you're welcome here, but you don't get to run the show. And both of those are really important for that wounded part to know. You're creating a new relationship with that part of you. You're saying, yes, You have a seat at the table. I'm listening, but no, we're not going to allow your tantrum to take over the experience. And then, so then this wounded part of you is getting both these signals. You're welcome, but you can't run the show, is really useful for that part of you to heal and to become not cut off again. It all started when it got split off. It got dissociated through a wound. So when we invite it back in, but it's got to play by the adult rules, it can't be just totally acting out, then it allows it to kind of come back and become part of you again. And then when it becomes part of you, it's no longer, that thing, it won't there's nothing to get activated anymore because that split off part of you has unified with you again. So to review the last week and this week, we first of all started with discerning between the connected part versus the activated and wounded and fear-based part. Then this week, once we've noticed that, it's like, especially in that time that's really ripe for intervention, that we're noticing the wounded part, but it hasn't fully taken control yet. It's a time when we can kind of discipline it in a compassionate way rather than a harsh way, telling it to just knock it off, And we're disciplined and compassionate. It's like, you belong here. You have a voice, and I'll listen to you and I'll consider what you're saying, but we may or may not do that. We're actually going to have to do this, and then maybe we can consider what you're saying later on. So that is my video for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are still enjoying your summer, and as you go through your week, maybe just notice when part of you is protesting or not happy with, or judging is another way it shows itself, or being defensive, or whining, or whatever else. And rather than getting down on that part of you, maybe you can find a way to invite it to the table, listen, but letting it know that it doesn't get to run the show. And I will see you in a week.